I'm Debbie Foreman, and welcome back to another episode of GAPCAST, where we react to let's say content that's out on social media, whether it's through famous people, politicians, influencers that talk about the world of gaps. Now, this episode's going to be a little bit different, actually a lot different. So when we were preparing for this video, I had seen it on social media and I said, I'd like to react to this because to me, there's a world of gaps. And I saw this gap as a mother. I hadn't seen the video yet. I just saw the title and I said, hey guys, I want to react to this. And then it opened a debate internally with my internal team. So today we are going to do a team reaction. And let me explain how this goes. I saw the title and it hit me as a mother. But when I brought it up, let me introduce you to Paulo. Paulo is our partner and digital media director, and Luke is the content producer here at GapTrax. And so I said to them, hey guys, take a look at this, okay? And we're looking at it, and it opened a conversation, a debate, because each one of us stands differently on the political spectrum. So I sit in the middle, Luke is more to my left, and Paulo's more to my right. Okay. This being said, I was seeing it as a mom and not through the political spectrum at first, but then it opened a conversation. So I said, you guys, look at all these gaps. We have cultural gaps, ideological gaps, political gaps, gender gaps, gaps in understanding. And so we decided to actually react to this as a team. But the truth being said, we all saw the video, so it's not a first reaction. It's not a blind reaction. It's a commentary. All right. So Paulo, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think it's when you sent us that video, it's been part of the political conversation, right? Words that you can use, that you can't use, just terminologies, what offends people, what doesn't offend people, and we all think differently about what should be said or how things should be said and how things should be. At the end of the day, for all respecting each other as adults and having, respectful interactions, I think that's the way to go. And not taking everything as political or as a challenge or a debate or a conflict every time something comes up. But you were talking about gaps, and one thing that came to mind is it's more of an emotional gap from one side because it's almost like it's an emotional reaction to how things should be. So you put aside common sense, you put aside facts, and you just react emotionally. And to me, that creates a gap between someone that's going to be more rational, maybe not rational, but someone that thinks they're more in the common sense side and the fact side, and the other person that's going to be more reacting emotionally to how they feel when they hear something, when somebody calls them something or somebody calls somebody else something. So to me, it pops up emotional gap. Two sides, the way they deal with facts and reality, totally different, and two different worlds. That creates a huge gap, and it gets fueled by emotions.
You know what we didn't mention, and we're going to have to edit this into the beginning of the video, okay? Which is, what is the subject we're talking about? We are talking about...
That's right.
The term mother or mom is now being legally changed to gestating parent in New York, okay? So when I saw gestating parent as the title, I was like, wait a minute. No more moms. We're all gestating parents. And that's where this whole thing stemmed from. And one other thing that I'd like to add was this was like a couple of days, maybe 3 or 4 days before Paulo's first child was born, which obviously hit another nerve. But before we go further into that, Luke, any comments? Because then we're going to start the running the video.
Okay. So, Debbie, when you first showed me this video, you were hyper fixated on the gestating parent erasing the mom thing. I'm a chronically online person to a large degree, and I'm in these Instagram comment streets. I'm in YouTube comments all the time. There is a cadence. There's an expectation of watching people watch half of a video and immediately get to click clacking and fighting in the comments before they have even deduced all of the facts within the video. And I'm guilty of this. So there's a few things happening in this guy's reaction that are comparing one set of issues to a completely different set of issues, and I want to hear you both talk about them all. And I'm going to give as many reactions as I can from my own perspective because
That's so true,
I'm
though.
single. I'm not a parent. I've been raised in Los Angeles, California, my entire life. 38 years old. I know, like, you've spent a good portion of time in Brazil, Debbie. Like, you're out in Brazil, Paulo. So, like, I know there are like cultural
But
differences.
don't
Asian,
forget, Paulo was raised in Atlanta.
all right, ATL.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be a mixture of experiences between the reactions in this video and how each of us will perceive what's happening. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
For sure. Yeah. And Luke, you were saying we start watching a video and we immediately want to start commenting, and reacting without actually watching the whole thing and understanding, and then, giving an input, or commenting on other people's comments to start a conversation.
Exactly.
So I've seen that happen a lot.
Well, there's an important fact here that Luke brought up, and we're going to break that down, and then we're going to roll the video. The socio-demographic profile of each of us, okay? And how each one of us has a different reaction immediately just because, well, first there's and this is gestating parent from mom. So there is a gender question here. But gender, I'm the only woman. I'm the female, born, declared, and proud to be female.
AFAB, assigned female at birth.
At birth, assigned female at birth will be
Right,
female.
there's a term for
Everybody
that
might
now.
yes, okay, yeah. I wasn't assigned female at birth. I was just female.
You're right. They didn't have that term.
No, it was we didn't have ultrasounds.
That's
when
another
I was born.
debate. That's another debate.
Yeah. But there
right?
was no ultrasound, so they had to wait till the baby was born, and there was no way of knowing the sex beforehand. Because here I am. I am a female, dual resident, United States, Brazil. I'm 57. I'm getting closer to 58. I have a daughter who's a teenager. I'm a single mom that supports that, and you put and I'm Jewish. Okay, so we've got traditions and customs and so on and so forth. Now, there were no ultrasounds at the time, so my mother and father had to wait until I was born to know what the sex was, and there was no question. It was either boy or girl. Done. And yes, I got a girl's name and was raised a girl. Okay, so that part of it is my demographic, socio. Paula, go into yours because we have religion, culture, languages also in Paula's. Then Luke already gave his.
Right. Well, born in Brazil. Right now I've lived basically half of my life abroad and half in Brazil. If you sum up all of the years that I've been back and forth, but my teenage years and early adulthood, I was in Georgia. So that's where I, went to school, grew up, went to college, and born just regular family, lower middle class, Protestant family. That's where I come from. In Brazil, lived in small towns, never lived in a big town like São Paulo or Rio or any of the big cities here. So I just small town guy.
And then there's Luke.
And like my background is mixed, literally, like Black and Mexican American. Growing up in LA, Inglewood primarily is my hometown. A mixture of public and private schools, a mixture of primarily white institutions for college, and some conservative towns that I've lived in. I've mostly dated people who are left or left of center. Like I said, I'm single with no kids. There is a lot of exposure to multiple different types of opinions that I encounter in my day-to-day life, but also based on how I've grown up and where I live, there are ways that I feel like I was socialized to discuss certain things, to talk about certain things, to think about certain things, how I present and what I say. And like I said, the idea of being chronically online and your etiquette and the trail that follows you in terms of how you present yourself into the world. And that kind of neurotic person who can hyperfixate on what's the right word to say. Am I going to regret what I tweeted? Am I going to have to comb through the things that I have ever said or written or spoke about on camera to make sure I'm on the right side of history 5 years from now if the rules change again? That is the thing that, and I am not alone in my peer group with some of these issues, but I also have plenty of peers who are on the opposite side of that. They go, I'm going to say whatever I think, and I don't care what anybody says. So that's where I'm coming from with this.
Well, now I'm curious to know what side of history we're going to be on because we each have a different view. Paulo, let's roll the video. And if we need to pause it, any one of us, like if we want to pause it, just say pause. Okay, and then we'll comment. But you guys, just remembering, I am looking at this as a mother that works with systemic gaps. Okay, so go.
Well, guys, it's Pride Month, and we know what that means. It means that when some people are going to have controversial opinions on some of these topics, a lot of people are going to ask, why do you care? How does it affect you? Why don't you just let people live their own lives? Which is why I'm here to tell you that New York Democrats just passed a bill that...
When he said, I'm not going to get into most of it, it's that why don't you let people live their own lives? The question is, and Paulo, I think you agree with me, Luke doesn't, is that we live our own lives and we don't change anything in our lives, and then we're reprimanded for not changing our own lives. So we live our own lives, we do our own lives, we don't change our own lives, we keep our own lives, nothing changes, and then because we don't alter how we live our lives, we're reprimanded for not being altering.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone is allowed to live however they want to, especially in the U.S.
Yes, they're allowed to live. I've got no problem with that, except that as things are, a lot of these radical changes, as they happen, if I don't adapt to it immediately, then I'm reprimanded for not going through the adaptation process.
Right. Well, some will say progressive, that's the progressive agenda, is to bring all of these changes, and then the conservative side will say, no, we need to conserve what has worked and what's true and what works and what's beautiful and what's, all of the, whatever that ideology brings to the table. So, but everyone is allowed to live however they want to live within the law, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
No, but his statement is that that's not on the table. The question is that as changes happen, people that don't adapt, let's go, roll it and let's keep going. You'll see where I'm going.
That rewrites parts of their state law to replace words like mother, father, and paternity with gender-neutral terms such as parent, parentage, or in some places for the word mother, gestating parent. And here's where I stand.
Okay, stop. My daughter was born. It'll be 17 years in October. And when she was about 11 months old, we started saying, okay, your first word is going to be mamãe, mommy in Portuguese. Mamãe, mamãe. Now, can you imagine the complexity of taking a year-old baby, a year and a half as they're learning to speak, saying, gestating parent. I gave you, hi, gestating parent. And I'm going to say, hello, gestated child. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Well, that's just common sense, right? Which isn't common, as we say.
Caring about what you random adults call yourselves in your personal life. I don't care. Go live your life. I might not agree with you, but go live your life. Where it becomes an issue is when other people feel as if everyone else has to accommodate them, and when that language starts to move out of people's personal lives and their personal identity into laws, schools, medicine, sports, the workplace, children's spaces, and every institution that other people who don't agree with it have to live under. That does affect everybody. Now, the Democrats who are in support of this are...
Put a pause there. I agree, and that's a gap. That's a gap. It's a gap. It's a gap. Luke, you could go Paulo, then Luke.
He says something about accommodating language, right? And I was thinking about this the other day, and I think I heard somebody talk about this. Is how language, it's not just words that are coming out. It's not just the sound that we're making. It means something, and because of that, it shapes how we think. So language shapes how we think.
It does.
So the problem with trying to change language is we're trying to change how people think. And if you do that early enough, well, then you have a group of people that will grow up thinking differently, right? So the push to change language, a lot of times,
is to
for
change
more,
the
I mean,
thought
what I
process.
think is to change a thought process, to reshape society, a group of people, reshape how things are, and then that's where the pushback comes, right? We don't want to change necessarily how things are perceived, how we think. We want to conserve things as they are.
So, it's interesting because think of it as a gap like this. There's a lot of language studies where, when English doesn't have this, but Romance languages and other languages do, where the article is masculine or feminine. In some languages, a bridge is masculine, and in some languages, a bridge is feminine. So when people have an image of a bridge in a feminine culture, they see it as something that you traverse, something that's from one side to the other, something that's going to care for you so that you're not going to be harmed. When it's in the masculine context, they see it as steel, engineering, strong. So yes, words shape ideologies, shape belief, shape thought processes. So from the beginning of humanity, there's a gap to me right now, which is the sound ma, ima, my, mama, pa, papa, pai. That these are sounds that the babies have been making that have identified the mother and the father, where there wasn't a question of it. So the gap that we're looking at here is that we're taking thousands of years of what was normal and natural, and we're creating a thought process that's not natural. It is not natural to be gender neutral in birthing. Done.
Well, you're right, because, well, I mean, it's common sense, right? You're either male or female.
Or you're not,
Well, now
according to New York.
Well, now there's a bunch of things in between, right? A bunch of categories in between. But at the end of the day, you have two sides. You still have two sides.
Luke?
Your mic is off.
I don't think that the issue necessarily should be focused at first on the concept of whether or not motherhood or fatherhood loses value by changing the wording of a law, if what we haven't discussed yet is what the law actually is, what it's for, and what it is changing. Because it's really easy to get into an argument about the slippery slopes of changing how people discuss and describe gender socially. And especially in this day and age, when people of varying ages and cultures and backgrounds, especially in the United States, have a general fear of the idea of being canceled if they say the wrong thing, if they do the wrong thing, if they have an opinion that doesn't match the majority, which, the concept of majority minority is one of those things in the United States which has a very, very full, rich, and touchy history. So
yeah.
if we review the actual bill that he's referencing in New York, it says that the New York State bill, it says A8382A. The point is to replace mother and father with gestating parent and non-gestating parent. And the other vocabulary shifts are paternity and filiation become parentage and putative father, the assumed father. And that the point of this is to help family court structures and child support, custody, adoption, surrogacy, for marriage licenses, divorce proceedings. This is about family court language becoming more equal in how it's approached in order to give rights to people who are perhaps married in same-sex marriages, people who are transgender parents, and people who have surrogate parents. So the language shift to include gestating and non-gestating doesn't appear to be intended at first glance to force people into saying gestating parent or making their kids start calling them gestating parent instead of mommy or daddy. But I can understand that there is a general slippery slope about how and when these terms start being enforced socially. And I think that's where some of your issues come through, Debbie.
Okay. So what he did say is that's what it appears to be. That's great. But when these things happen, it starts going into the schools. at early childhood, which was what Paula was saying, because now it's on every schools, medical, in different services, so on and so forth. I experienced with my daughter about when she was about 14 going into surgery, and we're at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. Okay. Now she's at the pediatric area of the Children's Hospital for surgery, and we have a form to fill out. The first question was her name. The second was not why she was there, what she was being operated on, what the diagnosis was, who the doctor was, her medical statements, her social security, none of that. It was name and sex assigned at birth, and gender identity now. And she was in the pediatric ward. That hit me really hard because it was more important to understand the gender of a 14-year-old going into surgery than it was to understand why she was going into surgery. And so when we say those agendas, and then same thing at her school, and then we go into this, which is there's terminologies for gender that we have to adapt to because there's all the changes. That's great that there's changes. Okay. But they're taking pre-existing words in English and making us readjust instead of creating new terminology. But okay, in this case, there's a new terminology. And so my question is, why don't we have a drop list? And when we were looking further into this, have a drop list and choose which one assigns to you. No, we need one overarching term. Well, there's drop lists for there's no drop list for gender. It's a pushed agenda on what those pronouns are going to be. Pre-existing English words, they is now can be a singular. Anyways, it goes into all of this. There's pre-existing words. There's new terminologies for gender. I'm back. But when we look at race for college applications, it's a drop list. It's, are you Caucasian? Are you Latin? Are you African American? Are you Asia Pacific Islander? Whatever. So if it's for race, it's okay to be able to segment it into categories. If it's for gender now, it's not. So it's either one or the other. And I don't understand why it's just not human race and that's it. But it's a pushed agenda because it does change how you have to categorize. When you walk into a school with a child, you now have to be careful of how you position yourself or you will get the lashback. Go. And to me, that's a gap.
Yeah. Well, Luke, you were saying what you were explaining what the bill means, and I think that this guy, what's his name? Do you guys know his name? I don't know what his name is. The moderate case, yeah. So I think he explains how all of that is already taken into account. There's already legal terminology. There's already the legal part of that is already there. So nothing really needed to be changed or accommodated because it was already established. Something like that. I think we're gonna watch that.
Watch it. Let's go through it.
Yeah.
When I looked into him, the guy, his Instagram, the moderate case, his name is Jacob Smith. He's actually been a staunch supporter of the Jewish community. He had
that's how I
a couple of videos about anti-Semitism went viral, in particular after the October 7th events.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Yeah, I have no idea who he is. The first time I saw him was when Debbie sent me
I just
video.
saw it. Go to the comments. Roll through the comments real quick. There was one that said, as a gay man, hold on. I am fed up with how much gender ideology has overtaken everything. I am gay because I am a man attracted to other men, not men presenting people. What is that? Not men presenting people, not man identifying persons, and I do not have a genital preference. I'm attracted to men. The structure of all human society has been built around the basic understanding that there are men and women. Twisting this fact to accommodate the self-identifying preference of a very small minority of the population has effects on policies, public health, government budgets, and etc. I agree with that.
Well, that's a reasonable way to see things. To me, that's reasonable.
It's not okay. It's not that it's not reasonable. What it is you are taking some of the words in the issue for this law being shifted, lifting them and placing them into a pile of a completely separate argument. You mentioned they being singular, Debbie, and I do agree that they being singular can be strange in the context of assigning it to a single individual when they are talking about their own gender identity. But the fact that we use they for a singular specifically isn't a new thing. Like, we all use that every single day without thinking about it. And like, if someone dropped their wallet, that means that the plural meaning of they doesn't just die. You're just operating it in a different flexible placeholder for language. English language is flexible, but you also mentioned like why don't we have like these new? Why can't we have a new list of things to select from if we already have like pre-existing boxes like mother and father? Like, I agree that mother and father are pre-existing boxes. Like if a surrogate's carrying a baby for a gay couple, or if like they're using in vitro fertilization, these are new scenarios. So it's like the law is trying to update because trying to force a surrogate into the pre-existing box of a mother just like breaks the legal system. That the shift in changing the term is about adding protection for the minority when majority rule and what's normal and what's common doesn't fit everybody. In trying to change it to gestating parent, you're creating an inclusive box for bureaucracy specifically, not for social change, for all of the 1,001 forms that we as citizens have to deal with in being on the grid.
Then why don't they do that? Why don't they do that then with race?
Because that is a separate issue, in particular because race is a social construct. And if you get into the discussion
So is gender.
of why, wait, because we're talking about the United States. As soon as you want to start breaking into the discussion about why race is a social construct, we're going to have to talk about why, and we're going to have to walk backwards towards Columbus. We're going to have to walk towards the colonies from Portugal and Spain in the Caribbean. We're going to have to talk about the transatlantic slave trade, and we're going to have to talk about everything else that led up to things like separate and equal, and why we have this category of things over here and this category of things over here. See, they're separate but equal. And we saw how well that worked out. So if you try to apply, copy, paste the same argument from here to here, you're going to run into several walls, and that walls that have not really been paved very well either.
Paulo, what's your take on this?
Well, my take is I don't know how big of a deal what the New York government is trying to do. I don't know. From listening to this guy, to me it's just totally unnecessary. Is it just a new bureaucracy, like you said, just one more thing to fill out in a form to make what do you call it? Make life easier for whatever it is whoever it is that's behind the form, right? Whoever needs to get that form and use that information. I don't know.
But what happens when you start walking into a place and they say, "Hi," because you say, "For the form, are you the gestating parent?" Okay, yes. But then you walk in and you start having conversations in the schools, and you sit down and say, "Are you the gestating parent?" "No, I'm the mother." "Oh, you mean you're the gestating parent?"
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to get at. I don't know if it's something that's going to happen and that's it, or if that's just that's the precursor to a bunch of other things that are going to be forced down everyone's throat because it's the right thing to do, right? It's how people should be treated and whatever the reasons will be. So again, I don't know if it's something that's going to...
Let's play out the rest of this. To me, okay, wait, before we go, there's a gap between each one of us has an interpretation of whether it's a gender issue, whether it's a cultural issue, whether it's a...
It stems from the gender issue. It stems from that. If that wasn't the case, it wouldn't exist. I don't think this would exist.
It stems from surrogacy laws, like...
Well, but gender.
No. That's technically it does, right? Because a lawyer came up with this. But why did this come to somebody's mind? Why did somebody think of this? Well, because of the ideology that started decades ago, infiltrating schools, society.
Well, here's the question of self-identification.
That leads up to people thinking, well, now we need to call somebody gestating parent. Because we need to accommodate that specific that specific group of people.
But here's the question: because to me, it's not gender; it's self-identification. Okay, it's the question of self-identification. People can self-identify right now in gender, but there's those ones that say that they're dogs or cats or fuzzies or whatever it is. Okay, but how far can
Furries?
you
You're talking about furries?
furries or whatever it is,
Fuzzies.
whatever, fuzzies, furries, whatever. But it's like I self-identify as. How far do you take self-identification, and how far do you push that agenda?
How far are you willing to take having yourself be recognized exactly as you want to be recognized? To the point that other people call you ridiculous and you go, oh, I guess I'm ridiculous. I'll stop caring about how I'm identified. Or are you willing to go the distance in order to have yourself be recognized the way you want to be recognized? It is not a clean cut answer, because it is easy to look at something like a furry and be like, you can call somebody crazy and be like, it's crazy that you want me to call you a furry when you're a human being and I can see that you're a human being. But gender identity is a different issue. And on paper, I have yet to hear an argument, a really rational argument, about what you as an individual lose from having to recognize somebody affirming their gender the way they're asking, in particular in the workplace or at school. There's a lot of hand-wringing that I have seen.
I don't have a problem with people being. I do not have a problem with people being able or allowed to identify. The question is, God damn it. The problem isn't about me losing something of somebody being able to identify. It's taking away from what is already identified, and it happens in every case. And this is the big. Let's
That's
figure out
the
the rest.
takeaway. That's like what is being taken away is the thing that I'm asking.
They take away to include. They don't add on. It's like that. We're going to kind of start moving away from that, because by moving away from that to put it in other areas means that then everybody's represented, but you're not represented for how you were. And that's moving away. It's not adding on. It's like we're going to keep this and then move into this. It's like, okay,
why does expanding the room make you feel like you are losing identity?
Because it happens.
I think I understand what Debbie's saying. Debbie's saying it's taken away to include. So instead of having mother, father, gestating parent, well, now let's take away these two and let's just leave gestating parent.
That's it. And it goes with everything else that we've been watching.
There is another term for, I guess, when you say father or paternal, they use the word putative, because they're trying to uncouple the biological process from the legal description. So gestating parent literally just becomes the parent that carries the child to term, and the putative parent is the parent that delivered the male sperm part of the DNA.
That's beautiful legally. That's beautiful legally. As soon as it turns into legally, I don't have a problem with that. My problem is that the agenda is going to be pushed, and we're going to have to start identifying ourselves as the gestating parent, not as the mother.
I'm interested in hearing you describe your hypothetical on the slippery slope of it moving from legal to social. Basically, like,
wait, you said at the beginning, in 5 years,
you better start saying gestating parent, or else we're going to take things from you.
You know, Luke,
like, how does that work?
Luke said at the beginning, when we do these comments and we comment, 5 years down the road, what side of history were you on? And some people are very hyper careful. So I think we can mark this for a 5-year hindsight.
That's fair.
That's
because
it's easy to see, if we look 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30, we see how things progressed. Right. And it all started with the little things. That's how it always is in any with any big changes, and nothing happens overnight. Right. You have to insert these little changes that will add up. At some point, it becomes something big. And I've heard people say, I think you asked Luke, how does it affect? You said something along the lines of how would it affect us personally? Accommodating people, and it doesn't really on the day to day if we're being respectful, if we're being polite, courteous, and that's how it should be, right? If somebody, I don't go up to a random person that acts differently than I think they should be acting and reprimand them, whatever. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? As long as you don't, insert yourself in
and push
my
the
life and then try to
narrative
affect
onto me.
Yeah, and push your narrative onto
But
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
But
narrative is being
what it
pushed
seems
back.
is when we look online at everything that's going on, it seems that the minority is trying to push their
Push
narrative, push their ideology, push the way they think and how they want to be
self-identification.
accommodated to the rest of the people. That's what it
I
seems
want
like
to hear.
when we look at everything that's going on. And obviously, if we're looking at online, we're in bubbles and everything is just hyped up in to each side. So
Is there another example of something that you're thinking of when you're talking about an agenda being pushed from the minority onto the majority as, like, I guess, an expectation that you need to start doing it this way or else? Because that's
Well,
kind
it's
of where
been
my mind goes
since
when I
we
hear it.
moved since we moved to the United States 3 years ago, and Sophia
Yeah.
in her school, it's walking on eggshells the entire time. In the beginning, she was like, "Oh no, I think it's now." At the age of 16, she's like, "Mom, it's just too much. It's
The
too
example,
much."
yeah, like what's the?
I don't
what
want to
is
get
too
into
much?
it because I'm going to be talking about the School of Minor Children, which is right down the
Okay.
road from my office, and so on
Well,
and
I
so
guess
forth.
the
It's crazy.
ideological issue
But
itself, without
it's
naming the school.
everywhere. It's when we walk into anywhere that if we do not adopt what's being pushed out, which didn't exist 10 years ago, then we get pushback. So it's either mute, and in the Jewish community since October 7th, the same thing. If we self-identify as Jews, we're at risk.
Of
No, at risk. It's we've been spat on, we've been pushed, we've been shoved, we've been sworn at, we've been whatever, and so it's there's
discrimination.
discrimination or anti-Semitism. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, when do you get to choose what you get to self-identify on, and when is it safe for one category? When is it safe for another category? And why does everything have to be pushed on?
Well,
Okay,
yeah, well, I think
But-
is we need to be able to choose and live, and that's it. Not choose and then suffer a consequence because of what we chose to do. Right.
and not choose and make everybody else have to take our choice or be
Well,
reprimanded for it.
I think you and I had discussed the concept of laws changing the terminology and that filtering into society. And
It
I gave
filters in.
another like parallel example of the government using terminology to describe people, which was the IRS. Like when we do taxes, the IRS doesn't have a separate checkbox for biological son, adopted daughter, stepchild, niece I have custody of. They just have a dependent. That's the umbrella term. Like if you look at gestating parent, the same way you would look at dependent on an IRS form, that doesn't mean that the government is erasing the word like son or daughter. You are not erased as a parent. It's just
I agree with you.
Wanting a single box to cover every scenario.
I agree with you because the IRS didn't have a political agenda. Now the question is, does New York have a political agenda? And that's what we're going to only know looking in hindsight. We will only know in hindsight 5 years from now when we come back to this, if this was solely a technical term, because the laws have had to change to be able to include the technical term. They could have just changed the laws and kept everything as it is. You can't put in the term without changing the pre-existing paternal and maternal laws, especially with surrogacy and adoption. So first they had to change laws to be able to create this. Why not just change the laws? Now, I want to play, this is going to go on forever. I want to play the rest of this video because I want to play the rest of the video. Let's go.
All right.
Are arguing that family law is more complicated now, that we have surrogacy and adoption and same-sex parents and assisted reproduction, all of these things. So this is just a legal cleanup to make it, safer under the law. But it's not needed. That is their excuse. It's just stupidity. Because, practically speaking, the legal system has already had ways to handle all of these things. If a child had 2 legal mothers, they could already deal with that. If they had 2 legal fathers, they could already deal with that. If there was a surrogate, which is somebody who is carrying a child for another specific couple, or an adoptive parent or biological parent, a sperm donor, any of these things that are complicated family arrangements, the lawyers and judges have already had all of the legal tools that they need to deal with that. That's what court orders and adoption law and surrogacy arrangements are for, and that is what definitions inside of specific statutes are for. Absolutely nobody is looking at the woman who carried them, gave birth to them, raised them, protected them, loved them, sacrificed for them, and says, "Thank you, gestational parent, You know, that sounds insane.
I agree.
Because it is insane. And the Democrat defenders of this language know that it sounds insane, which is why they always hide behind the same argument. That it's just a technical legal arrangement. It's just inclusive. It doesn't affect you. But it does affect the people when the state starts to rewrite the basic language of family around activist assumptions that most people never agreed to and most people find to be stupid. And all of this isn't happening in a vacuum. New York has already passed a lot of stupid laws on things like this. They have moved towards placing X gender markers on birth certificates for non-binary children and on all of their other state records, things like that. So there's a pattern here, okay? It starts with you just have to be tolerant. Then it becomes change your language, accommodate for these people. Then it becomes change your workplace policy, then change your school policy, and then
And Debbie, I think that's the main issue is you start having to accommodate and you have to change, and then it becomes
And
mandatory.
what was
and then
gets
where,
abandoned.
And then where does it stop? Yeah.
And what was gets abandoned. So we do what was, then gets abandoned. And when it does, Luke, and we're going to watch this in hindsight, and we now have to wait and see. It gets abandoned, and it's a hindsight thing.
The issue that I take with his argument is that he is very quickly and kind of hastily conflating several different issues and connecting them to the thing that's happening in New York as if it is already a social problem that has gotten out of control, when what he's saying are individual truths that he is smashing together into one cohesive thing.
Until Luke,
yes,
until you are a parent. When you are a parent, it is
I haven't had a
all
vasectomy,
facets
so
at the
I'm never
same
going
time.
to be a parent.
And okay, so what I am saying is, they look like individual boxes, but your child lives in a all-inclusive society and goes through all the realms simultaneously. And as a parent, you go through all the realms simultaneously, and that's what.
We can break a couple of things that he said. Like, New York had legalized gestational surrogacy a couple of years ago, and it was so that the intended parents of a child are the legal parents the second that baby takes its first breath.
Yes, but to do that, Luke, go back to the document.
Hold on, Luke. What were you saying?
Wait, go back.
Yeah.
Just go back 1 sec. You're right about all of it except for one fact. To be able to change the terminology, because I looked this up, first they had to change the law and the policy. The law and the policy was already changed. Done. It could have stopped there.
To make that law actually work on paper, the state's entire filing system had to be updated to match it, because you couldn't have a modern surrogacy law but still use 1950s forms that forced the hospital to list a surrogate as the mother. The vocabulary had to catch up to the reality.
Perfect. So put a drop list.
That was how that started.
So just put in a drop list. Done. It's done.
You're updating a contract. The word mother is to help with the automatic assignment of custody. And gestating parent is describing the medical reality without accidentally giving away custody rights.
Well, the law and the policy were changed.
It is.
It's the law and the policy.
Yeah,
the law and
technically
the policy.
That's what's happening. You're just changing a form to make things easier, right? I think that's what we wish happened.
And if that's all it is,
yeah,
okay.
But what Debbie said, we're going to be able to know this 5 or 10 years from now,
in hindsight,
because it's all of the little changes that will add up to a big change later on, right?
Like, I'm not an expert in the law, obviously. Yeah. I'm not. But like, what we're talking about also has to do with legal philosophy. And if the state keeps mother and father, for example, for straight couples, right? But you create a separate legal category, a separate box, separate check box, drop box for like parent 1 and parent 2 for gay couples. You're literally building a separate but equal legal system. There's no two ways to redefine what that looks like, sounds like, and effectively is. To create a separate box, it's just separate but equal. And the separate system always gets delayed, underfunded.
It's not separate but equal. It's additional.
That is the same argument that occurred before the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was signed.
But you just told me 5 minutes ago, Luke, that we're going to separate. Gender has nothing to do with race, and gender is a whole different ballpark. So if gender is a whole different ballpark and separate but equal doesn't exist, then why are we taking away the two that pre-existed? It only gets taken away, and it gets taken away after the policy and law has been altered. The policy and laws
It's
have to
because
be
you're
altered to
framing
be
it
able
as
to.
it being taken away. There isn't anything being taken away. The
Hindsight
word
will
is
tell
just
us.
becoming a scientific shift. That's all.
I don't believe that. I believe, Paulo, where are you on this?
That's
Well,
fair. You don't believe it.
I believe
I don't,
that
because hindsight, I think we're watching a trend, and I think in hindsight we're going to know, but we have to wait 5 years.
Yeah, well,
maybe
I
if I'm
agree
wrong,
with you, Debbie. I agree that we're only going to know
in hindsight.
several years from now, if we remember. But
I'm
I
putting
think
this one on the
that
timer.
yeah, I think that nothing is done randomly or with no reason behind it, especially in government. And my distrust of the government, is that a word, distrust of the
Oh yeah,
government,
distrust is a big word.
makes me question every move they make because I don't know what's it for. And
Here's the thing. Like,
well, at the end
I
of the
think I'm
day,
hearing both of your frustrations.
yeah.
I do. Like, if
Well, I'm not
you're
frustrated. It doesn't affect me
I'm
right
not
now.
Gotcha.
not
Maybe
frustrated.
just
I'm
Debbie. Like, if it feels like the state is going to make 95% of the population just change their vocabulary to accommodate the 5%, I get the frustration.
It's not
But the
just
law-
vocabulary. It's
Well,
not just
it sounds like
vocabulary.
your issue is that it's a slippery slope. That
It's
starts
an
with
identity.
it, and then
If
it
we're
moves
allowed
into,
to
like,
self-identify,
social enforcement.
if we're allowed to self-identify, if self-identification in gender is so important, then let me self-identify as a female mother that gave birth. Boom. I want to
No one's
self-identify.
stopping you from doing that socially, and
I
the
want to
term on the
self-identify.
contract doesn't take that away from you. You get
Wait.
to keep calling yourself a mother.
Hindsight will let us know if that turns out to be a taboo subject that we're only allowed to do behind closed doors. And that's the hindsight that we're going to be waiting for. You guys?
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
gonna
I
call-
think that's the issue. We don't know what the repercussions will be. We don't know why they're doing it. We know we know what they're telling us, right? But again, it's how I see things. I don't know why they're actually doing those things. I might have a few ideas, but they're all in my head. So it is a slippery slope, though, when it comes to because of all of the ideologies, gender, everything else. It is to me, it is a slippery slope. That's how change starts. You have to start little by little until you can get to where you want to be.
There's never going to be a perfect scenario. But here's my take on it is that hindsight is a powerful tool that as you get older, you guys, I'm 57, so 5 years from now I'll be 62. You guys are a lot younger than me. And in hindsight, as you watch change and trends, as you watch change and trends, it becomes clearer and clearer how when policy and law is changed and adapted without an agenda, like the IRS, you're dependent. Okay. But there's no agenda pushed onto it, and it's not pushed into schools and hospitals and so on and so forth. It's on your IRS form. I get it. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. And being a gestating parent as a legal term that's inside the courts for custody or something like that to identify. But when it does get pushed into, and you have to use that terminology verbally out loud in front of, because you're no longer given the right to self-identify just as a mom, because you're going to be asked, oh, you're the mother, you mean you're the gestating parent? And I'm going to watch that. I think in hindsight, this is what we're going to watch happen, because it's a process, but we don't know. If I am wrong, Luke, I would be happy to admit it. I will come
That's
and I will
fair.
take you to the 5-year lunch and say I'm very, very happy to admit that I was very, very wrong, and that everybody's happy and there was nothing there. And in 5 years, but we won't know.
What I will say, kind of like as a branch here, is where people like Jacob in the moderate case can conflate a few things that I just want to pull apart. Is financially, for the IRS and bureaucracy and contracts and forms, those don't get discussed socially, because the IRS is an institution in the government built for handling financial things. When you're talking about parenting and parenthood, any of the forms that are attached to the federal grid are for institutions in which we do have to interact socially. All of those government forms are for institutions like schools, like churches, like
State,
a lot of places.
state, not federal.
Sorry, my apologies, state. That, I mean, but the point being, the realm in which those forms are necessary are forms in which we do have to interact with other people as part and parcel of what's being handled. It's family, it's children, it's parents. So in order to make sure that the 5% is represented in a way that is affirming, it's not taking away from the cultural power of the majority to acknowledge the 5%. That is basically saying that you and I want the same thing, and this is just one way of going about it. And if history, American history, has taught me anything, is culturally terms change, ideas change, socially things shift, and the majority usually ends up being uncomfortable with what the 5% is wanting, but eventually adapts. And if it doesn't, then, well, we see who's currently in office, and that could be an argument for another day.
So,
Yeah,
do
Debbie,
Paulo,
at the end of the day, real quick, at the end of the day, it's all about the agenda. That I don't know what the agenda is,
I agree with you.
and we're only gonna know in hindsight, like you said. So
I agree with you. I agree with you.
So-
I'm
so
much
yeah.
more in agreement with
Yeah.
Paulo, Luke, than I am with you, although I adore you dearly. But we don't know.
Yeah, no offense
Let's hope.
taken.
Yeah, no. Let's hope. I'm more. I think there's an agenda. No, there is an agenda, because if it were just law and policy, it could be adapted. There's other ways to do it. How it's going to trickle down and weave into day-to-day life is what remains to be seen, and that's what we have to wait and see. Luke, I fully agree that there has to be ways for everybody, because we all want an all-inclusive society. Okay, but like, you don't do equity, you don't do equality, you produce it. Look at it from the DEI. When people say, do you do DEI? That's a verb. Do you do diversity? No. Do you do equity? No. Do you do inclusion? No. Can you produce it through different, let's put it this way, beginning with a diverse, equitable, inclusive society, education, programs from birth, then you can reach that impact of diverse, equitable, inclusive societies, which is what we all want. But
Well, you have to
demand
reach
it,
that by listening.
yeah, but it starts with education in the things. But to demand it as a verb, I'm going to do you be, it's a demand, and you don't do. That's not a verb. Diversity is not a verb. Equity is not a verb. Inclusion is not a verb. And what they are doing are verbal actions on us to demand a change. That change has to come from us learning to be holistically involved, holistically accepting, without the verbiage of demand.
I would ask you to just ask yourself, when you go through topics like this, who is they and who is us? Because you're a fan of NLP.
I'm going to say I'm putting it to government, to voters. Let's just divide it out. The voters, the government, or civilians, and government, policymakers, and policy receivers. That's the way I'm seeing it.
You want to be listened to when you have a government of the people. If the people who we elect are supposed to be representative of us, they are us. So in order to understand any social issues that may come up in the they versus us argument, you have to identify who's in the they and who's in the us, and who are we trying to protect? Who are we trying to give more access to? Who are we trying to represent? Who are we trying to give representation?
Good point. Do you want to move to New York?
It's expensive. It's expensive in Los Angeles, Debbie. I'm not trying to move to New York. They just finally started putting subways and buses in LA. No, I don't want to move to New York. I don't like snow.
Living in Brazil.
Yeah, all right. Okay, you guys. So we have a lot of content here. There's a lot of gaps in perception, gaps in belief. But there's going to be a gap in time on this one. I think this is our biggest one. A gap in. We're going to put this into the 5-year hindsight to see which actual gaps we're going to be able to plot and map out. We will use impact. We'll use our impact gap mapping thing, which is input, output, outcomes, results for final impact. Say that again. We have input. We put in input is the data that we're receiving right now from this conversational or debate. So we have an input. It's going to create an output, which are the laws, the policies, the forms, the social conduct, there are going to be outcomes, and those outcomes will be measured by the results, and that is going to create a final impact. So we will plot this out in gap processing at the end of the thing, unless we see beforehand that there's an actual cause and effect or action reaction. If in 1 or 2 years there's a uprising on this, or there's something has happened, or there's been something in the judicial system, or if there's been if it's gone to court or something like that, then we can look at it better. Or if there's a problem that arises from it, we'll be able to map and plot it. Right now, we're talking about looking at 5 years in hindsight, where we will just go through the input, output, outcomes, results, and impact, and see both the subjective and objective, and see what that brings us.
I know that there's a lot of people that agree with you. And I know that probably this transition has been jarring for a lot of people. So I'm glad that you're asking these questions, Debbie. I'm glad that you're asking these questions out loud so that we can actually look at the mechanics of it all instead of just like fighting about it in Instagram comments and on Twitter. And as your producer, usually just behind the scenes, I appreciate you kind of letting me step in front of the camera to hash this out.
You guys, Luke, you guys can see. Luke and I, we work really well together. We have not always the same opinion, but we have the same human value that we want love and peace for everybody. We just see that there's different ways to approach it. And Paulo, it's the same with you.
For sure. Yeah, I agree.
I would like to thank both of you. Final comments, Paulo?
No, thanks for having me as well, Debbie. This was awesome. We should do it again.
So for those of you watching, once this gets edited down, to our great editor down in Brazil, Gilson, because we lost connection so many times, and we're going to have to edit this down to about 25 minutes anyways, that we're an hour and 5. As you guys, GapTrax doesn't exist alone. Keynotes don't exist alone. The work that we do does not exist alone. And these are two great supporters in it, each one from one side of the spectrum and from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, that add value to everything that we do here at GapTrax.
That's right.
It's been a pleasure.
This is what diversity looks like. Diversity of thought, which is most important.
Okay, so I'm out. This is another episode of GapCast. I'm Debbie Foreman. Welcome back, and we're looking forward to your comments down. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Paulo.
Thanks, Debbie. Bye-bye.